Hi, I hope you've been having a good week. We're doing questions and answers today. And this shiur, like always, as always, is dedicated to Rachaleah Bas Rav Chaim Tzvi, who must have enormous merits. Okay, so here we go. My first son's bris was very difficult for me. I was not at the bris itself, but according to all reports he cried a lot. For instance, people said, more than I've ever heard. Bled a lot. As people said, he's a bleeder. Okay, and after the prolonged and miserable bandage adjustment afterwards, that I was present for, he was inconsolable, wouldn't nurse, and despite Tylenol and Motrin, fell asleep crying 45 minutes later. Of course, he was fine within 48 hours, and now he's a happy, happy boy. But as I approach the due date of this, my next pregnancy, very disturbing memories of the event dominate. I would like to approach a possible future bris with a more positive perspective than I currently have. Can you offer any words of inspiration to meaningfully highlight the spiritual grandeur of the mitzvah? Okay, so I'm going to say three things. You didn't ask me for this, but I'm going to give you a piece of advice anyway. What you experienced is very unusual. Very unusual. I have many nephews, Bli Ayin Hara, I have many sons. I've never seen this or heard of this. I would suggest that your husband and you have a talk with the mohel. I assume that you selected an experienced, reliable mohel. Find out what the problem was. There was a problem. This is not usual. It's not some cry, some don't, some bleed, some don't. I have never heard of a baby requiring Tylenol and Motrin, after a bris. So there might have been a problem. It might have been a technical problem. There are technical problems involved with Mila, which is a complicated mitzvah sometimes. But find out what the problem was. And if the mohel is insistent that there was no problem and that this is a usual occurrence, I would suggest that your husband consult with another mohel and see whether he agrees that this is normal and usual. And you hear where I'm going with this, I'm sure. But there's another thing. Another thing, though, is that the bris is expected to be, on a physical level, not a great delight. The reason why, Hashem could have made any symbol of being Jewish. He could have said, draw a picture on your palm. But he didn't do that. So there are quite a number of inyanim with bris. One is, of course, the organ that's the focus of the bris, is the organ through which eternity is transmitted. Literally, the future is there. So the child is taking his place as a link in Jewish eternity at that moment. So what does Jewish eternity mean? What makes Jews different than non-Jews is that our spiritual souls are powerful enough to redefine and to uplift the most mundane and physical desires, the most mundane and physical experiences of life, which is another aspect of the symbol of the Brit. So these two symbols together, that the empowerment and the permanence, are the main kavanot of the Brit. But there's something more. The idea of it involving blood. It says in the Torah, Dam Hu Nefesh, this is the soul itself. It's the ultimate act of dedicating one's soul to Hashem. So when you're at the Brit this coming time, if you'll be there, or when you're in the adjoining room, or in your home, or in the hospital, wherever you'll be, and you're aware of the Brit going on, put yourself there. It's a time for saying Tehillim. It's a time for Tefillah. I would recommend Tehillim Yud Bet. And it's a time for you to treasure this moment. One of the most moving Holocaust stories I heard, which is probably a story you heard as well, is that of the woman who, when she was being forced onto one of the horrific trains that were going to Auschwitz, carrying her baby, who obviously they thought was just a bundle or a package. Otherwise they would have taken him and smattered him to death in front of her, as they had the habit of doing. she shouted at one of the guards, "Give me a knife!" They carried these long knives. And the guard, thinking she was going to kill herself, which he would have found amusing, gave her the knife. And she circumcised her child. Now, they were both killed. But that doesn't mean that child isn't a link to Jewish eternity. That child is. So this is the preciousness of the bris. This is why when you look at the halachas, if for whatever reason a child isn't circumcised, you don't say, well, my father was negligent, and he was negligent with a lot of things, and that's life. No, the child, once he reaches adulthood, has to take responsibility for his own brit milah. He has to say, no, I want to be part of this. And if you have the case of, let's say, the tragedies that sometimes occur, let's say a father dies during the wife's pregnancy, so the community has to see to it. It's something that's